awesome. Thank you again so much, Zoe, for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So our podcast is about your journey in the music industry and how you got to where you are today.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me
Awesome.
about, you're in Nashville currently?
Yes, I'm over in East Nashville.
Are
Yeah.
you from Nashville originally?
No, I'm originally from Knoxville, which is 3 hours east of Nashville. So technically East Tennessee.
Okay. Still Tennessee.
Yeah, still Tennessee. Mm-hmm.
East Tennessee. Right
Yeah.
on. Cool. Tell me about growing up there. Like, how'd you get into music?
Well, let's see. Growing up there, Knoxville does have like a small local music kind of scene. So I definitely saw some musicians playing around. But growing up, I really kind of didn't view musicians as really like real people, as this fanatical type thing that no one actually was, because I didn't have any friends or family that were musicians.
Mm-hmm.
So growing up, I never really thought of that as something I could do. I did choir in middle school and high school, those sorts of things, piano lessons, begrudgingly.
Yeah, right. Isn't that always the case?
Yeah. And now I'm like, why didn't I stick with those piano lessons? Yeah.
That's every musician I've ever talked to is either, I'm so glad my parents forced me to do piano lessons, or I'm so mad that I gave up on piano lessons.
Yeah. Yeah, I can get by, but it's like, oh, I really should have given those a couple more years of serious thought.
Sure.
But I ended up like really taking music more seriously in high school when I started getting into musical theater.
Okay.
And I auditioned for a part that I really wanted my freshman year, and I didn't get it. I got cast as a part that I really didn't want. I was just a dude on the sidelines. So I was this little quirky freshman girl, having to play a dude when she, didn't get really any singing parts. So, which is totally fine. But it was that moment where it hit me, like that competitive side of me just said, I will get this. And then started taking voice lessons. And after that, I started getting the parts I wanted. And so I started realizing that I was good at it, and just kept going along with that, more in the classical realm starting off.
Okay. And musical theater, high school, this is all high school still.
Yeah, high school, and then into college, I ended up going to school for classical music.
Oh, really?
Originally, I went to Belmont, and originally I went for classical voice as a major, and, opera style singing there. And I did that for about 3 years and almost finished my full degree, aside from like a few gen eds and like a couple choir classes, that sort of thing. And I realized after doing that I really didn't like classical music, and I really didn't like singing that. And I mean, I love it and I appreciate it, but I realized that wasn't my life that I wanted to live. And that year I wrote my first few songs. And before that, I was just a bedroom poet, but I actually sat down, figured out how to play the guitar, wrote a few songs, and auditioned for Belmont's songwriting program and got into that. And then I was like, oh, maybe I'm actually good at this. The program was like, so
very hard to get into.
Yeah. I was like, oh, maybe I can do this. So it was definitely like figuring out later on, oh yeah, I can write songs. I didn't know that. Or I'm sure I knew, I just didn't have the confidence in myself to write the songs.
Sure. Right.
So yeah, that's my kind of journey growing up with music, is just sort of, always figuring it out, kind of learning something, failing, trying again,
right. Sure. With when to get into the college originally, did you have to do an audition
yes,
that way as well? Tell me about that.
Yeah, I had to do a voice audition, and I'd auditioned at a few schools, so they're all a little different, and so they kind of jumble up in my mind. But some of them would have you like sight read and sing, music, as well as like sing your own songs, maybe just one song or two at the most. And it was really daunting. The Belmont one was fine. I can't remember anything marked about it. It just was, that scary feeling of being judged on something when you're still young and thinking this is very important. I want to get into school, and,
Sure.
So there's that side of it.
But when you got into the songwriting program, that was an original song that you had to perform for them?
No, for songwriting, no. They have you send in songs that are recorded. So I had written the songs and I decided to go into a studio and record them, record
Oh,
my 3 songs and send that off to them. So they don't ask you to perform because I mean, there's some amazing songwriters that are horrible singers, or
sure.
not great performers, and vice versa. But like, yeah, so they just ask you to send it off.
Oh, okay. That's cool.
Yeah,
And from so you obviously you figured out that you are very good at songwriting. And what was next for you?
yeah, and I don't know if I was very good at that point. I was just like, oh, I can do this,
Yeah, well, you could
still
do it, and
learning.
they
Yeah,
get you into they put you in the school, so you had
yeah.
something there. It wasn't
Um,
like I want to be a songwriter, and they're like, okay, sure, why not? Like you had to
yeah,
have some
true, true.
skill
They did
set,
let me in for a reason. So after
right?
that, I graduated with a BS in songwriting, which I personally just chose the Bachelor of Science. I think partly for that title there.
Just to say BS.
Yeah, just to say BS. I mean, I loved the classes that were offered in that too, but it's just a little more fun. So it was worth a few extra math classes for dyslexic me.
Yeah.
So after all that, let's see, I was writing songs. I kind of put together a band, had people playing behind me, and I just started, playing shows and learning how to perform. Like I'd learned
Mhm.
how to perform in high school with musicals and stuff like that, but I really hadn't gotten my feet wet with the idea of going out there and bearing my soul with a guitar in front
Mhm.
of a bunch of people I don't know. So there was a lot of that of just learning the ins and outs of how I wanted to be as a performer and what I wanted my songs to be. So it was just a lot of trial and error after that of writing songs, playing them, you know, learning how to really, I guess, like tell a group of people what you want to do with a song and like bringing a band together saying this is the vision, all
Mhm.
that kind of learning experience there. So there's a
Sure.
lot of that right after.
What were those early shows like? Were you playing like coffee shops and like open mic nights?
Yeah, there were first definitely coffee shops and open mic nights, and then just like local shows in Knoxville or Nashville, or if someone said, "Hey, I live in such and such town, like in the southeast," I'd go there.
Uh-huh.
There's some So Far Sound shows, which I love. Just kind of little things like that. Nothing too crazy.
Okay.
Mhm.
And after that, like I know you put a record out. Your what is it? Yourself or Like You that came out in 2016. Were you still, were you in Nashville yet at this point?
Yes. So, like you, after I had written those 3 songs for my major to get into the program,
Mm-hmm.
um, I decided I still had more songs and wanted to finish recording those as well. So I took those 3 first songs I'd written and put it into that album along with the rest from that year. So it
Mm-hmm.
was really my first attempt at making music, at writing, and putting a record together. And during all that, I did lose a really large part of my hearing. So,
Yeah, I
like you,
read
that
that.
song in there, yeah, is really about kind of going through that moment there. So I definitely had um, my whole college career was definitely a finding myself and then almost kind of losing myself a little too with
Mm-hmm.
having literally losing my hearing. So there was that, like literally the first semester of songwriting class, I'd woken up one day and I couldn't really hear anything. And I remember going to class and telling everyone I can't hear you. And that like lasted for probably a month or so of just trying to figure out what was wrong with me. I finally started going to professionals and
Mm-hmm.
learned that I'd lost all the hearing in my left ear. I was already deaf in my right ear completely just from childhood.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so I was, yeah, so I guess I'd known, hearing loss to some degree with my right ear, but it was
Uh-huh.
never a big part of my life. It was just an ear.
All
Um,
right. So so
but
from birth or early on in childhood, you couldn't hear out of your right ear?
Yeah, they don't know when it started. It was probably always kind of there, but by the time
Mm-hmm.
I was 8, I had lost hearing in my right ear completely.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So, and no one knew why. And no, the doctors don't know why. I've gone to everyone I can think
A
of and
million of
taken
them,
random
yeah.
tests. Yeah.
Yeah.
So probably genetic, autoimmune, something like in that realm.
Mm-hmm.
But So my right ear had been gone for a while, but that first semester of songwriting class, I lost about half the hearing in my left ear.
Oh my
And
gosh.
yeah, so waking up and just not being really able to hear anyone or understand anyone, even just on losing like half your hearing when you wake up to that sudden abrupt
Mm-hmm.
loss.
Oh yeah, that must have been
It's just
terrifying.
yeah, it's very terrifying. And it was, yeah, just it was a lot. Everything around me sounded strange. It hurt to listen to things. It was draining. I'd go to class and then I'd go to sleep. I didn't do anything, so there was a lot of that. And through all of that, I eventually just kind of found a new normal. Nothing ever got better.
Mm-hmm.
um, and a few years later, as I'm making this second record that I just released, I
Mm-hmm.
lost another large chunk of hearing. And it's been a recurring theme at this point of just expecting to wake up and having that same moment of losing your hearing. And eventually it'll all go, I'm sure. But yeah, it's just
Oh.
kind of, it's
So,
progressive. So yeah.
well, okay. So you started losing it when you're in school. I was
Mm.
wondering, okay, so we even with the Like You record, you had the same situation happen where you couldn't hear out of your left ear during that process as well? Is that what you're
So,
saying?
so like you, that record and that song happened that same year that that hearing loss in my left ear happened, where I lost
Okay.
half of my hearing. And I wrote the song, the title track, Like You, because of that hearing loss that I just had. And
Okay.
it's saying that no one will ever sound like you.
Mm-hmm.
Just about like my future children, my future, mainly future children at the time, but just and anyone in my life, just thinking, I may not be able to hear you one day, but no one will ever sound like you. And at that time, I really needed to put that out on paper.
Mm-hmm.
So I wrote that and had finished the rest of the album that year, and then started the recording process as I was able to hear a little better. Nothing ever
Mm-hmm.
got better, but I was able to establish normality and learn to deal with the loss,
Okay.
learn to hear despite
Mm-hmm.
having that hearing loss, if
That's
that makes any
crazy. Yeah.
sense.
No, it
Yeah.
does. Yeah. But
Uh-huh.
you were talking about how it kind of returned, right? And then you lost it again?
Yes.
Okay.
So
Tell
I
me about
lost
that.
even more.
Okay.
I lost even more during the recording process for this current record. So
Oh
there's
my
a
gosh.
few years in between these two
Mm-hmm.
records. I'd started writing for this new record, How Does It Feel? And during the recording process, I wasn't able to hear for a month. Like it was kind of near, it was kind of in winter time. So I just vividly remember that in my mind, but wasn't able to hear for a month. I decided to stop recording. My doctor said I needed to get a cochlear implant surgery and get a hearing aid. So for my totally deaf ear, I needed to have an implant. And then in my ear, my left ear that has keeps losing hearing
Mm-hmm.
at these extreme rates, I needed to get a hearing aid at that
Oh my
point.
gosh. So you just
So
woke up again and the same thing happened?
it literally, it's weird. I literally will wake up and just not be able to hear. It's happened other times in before and after that month, that long month that
Mm-hmm.
it really hit, but I was just kind of dealing with it. But the point when I literally had a month where I couldn't hear anyone and had to trust people during a recording process and then ultimately stop recording, that was the sign. I was like, I can't go on living like this.
Mm-hmm.
I need to have some stability. So
Sure.
that's when I decided to get the surgery, because eventually I probably will lose all the hearing in that left ear, and at least I'll have a backup plan of my right ear having an implant, which
Sure.
kind of
So
makes
after
that.
getting the implant, can you hear now out of your right ear?
I can't technically hear out of it. It doesn't fix my hearing, but it sends like an electrical signal to my inner ear and
Uh-huh.
then tells my brain that signal. So I can hear out of it, but if I take it off, I can't hear anything. It's I'll show you. It's like
Oh, that's interesting. So you
it's
can.
this little thing here. You can kind
Oh,
of
wow.
see it. So I
Yeah.
literally put that over my ear, and put this on the side of my head. It's got a little magnet, and here, I'll take the headphones off so you can see. Just kind of goes like that.
Oh, wow.
And I put it over my ear, so I can hear out of my right ear when I'm wearing this.
Oh,
But
okay.
if it's off, I can't hear out of that right ear. So,
Interesting. Yeah, a friend of mine, he like they found it, and like he was getting all these headaches and like random pain, and like his wife was like, "You need to go get this looked at," and he was just like, "Whatever, I'm fine." And they found a tumor, a benign tumor on like his brain stem.
oh wow.
So they had it like, cut into his head, and they did surgery, and then he ended up losing the hearing in his right ear after that as well
Wow. Yeah,
from the surgery. But
those facial nerves and ear nerves and everything that connect to the brainstem are all so close. It's a scary thing to think about, someone cutting you up there.
yeah, and he was like, he's like you music and that you need that to do your
Yeah.
job, and he was like he was an audio editor, and
Oh, no.
and he did voiceover and stuff too, so he lost that hearing. But yeah, I mean, he didn't skip a beat. He still like
Yeah.
crushes it on all that, and he just I just can't hear out of that ear. But that's interesting. Maybe if he got one of those things that you have, he could be able to hear out of both.
Yeah, I know that they do, like if it was like nerve damage, brainstem stuff, they're like still in the research process, I believe,
Early
on that. Maybe
stages
I
that.
think maybe it's possible, but it probably is a little. Maybe it is possible. I don't know actually. I know that there's stuff going around with that.
Sure.
But
Yeah,
I mean,
it's just interesting. I've never
that is
heard of that
interesting.
before. Like, or like with your thing, I had never seen that. That's
Yeah,
awesome. Technology is so crazy nowadays.
it's freaky. It's weird to think I have like a little magnet and a computer chip in my head.
Yeah.
I'm bionic. Yeah.
It's all good. Last year I had to have surgery and have like a disc replaced in my neck, so I have a
Oh wow.
yeah. So we both got bionic
Wow.
stuff in us.
That's
It's all
crazy.
good. Yeah.
You sound fine, like
Oh,
voice
thank
and
you.
all that. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
it was like if you really look, there's a cut, like they had to come in through here, and then they changed, like they pulled it. Like I had one of my discs slipped, so it was like compressing the disc in my neck was compressing my spine, so they had to like yank it and put like a fake one in there. And
Wow.
yeah, so there's like a
That's
screw.
crazy.
Yeah. I know. Medicine is nuts. They could
You
just
turn
put
your
like
head?
everything. But I know I guess, well, I still have like 2 more that need to be fixed, and at that point, like they're saying I'll lose like a lot of range of motion, so I just haven't. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'll come back and do it
Just
later
wait till
on.
it starts
Yeah,
hurting.
until it's like I can't, I'll like walk anymore, then maybe I'll do it. But right now,
Might be
I'm
a
just
good sign.
gonna just kind of like let it ride.
Leave it be.
Okay. Well, wow. Okay, so you had the surgery done in the middle of writing this record.
Yes.
So you had to like put it on pause, get the
Yeah,
surgery,
and
and then so tell me from there.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, from there, so pushed pause, had the surgery, and then took a year off so a year to just like learn how to hear with this thing and just write more. So, which was a bit of a challenge at first, learning to hear and writing at the same
How
time.
do you like what did you do as far as exercises to learn how to hear?
Yeah, so when you first turn it on, everyone's experience is a little different, but most people say that it sounds very robotic. Like everything sounds very computerized and robotic.
Like sounds around you that you're hearing?
For me at first, it was just noise. It was just this influx of noise that I couldn't make any sense of. Anytime someone spoke, it's just like, I don't know what you're saying. I hear something, but I have no idea what you're saying. And eventually, after just literally just forcing myself to wear it unless I was sleeping, just always on, making myself go talk to people, which was very scary for me because I can't understand them. Making myself do those things and just wearing it in itself, you kind of learn. There are different like computer exercises and listening things you can do, and I did that a little, but I'm not one to stick with that well. I'm horrible at that. Like I'll try. I'll be really into it for the first few weeks and then stop.
Over it.
Yeah, I'm over this. But so really, it was just forcing myself to wear it, and eventually, I started noticing, like, especially with men's voices. At first, I I could hear them better, but they also had this robotic undertone to them. So
Interesting.
there was a little of that. Now I don't notice that stuff as much, and I still can't hear perfectly out of that right ear, even with
Mhm.
the implant, but it's much better. Like I can, I've done tests at my audiologist where they say like your hearing is markedly better when you wear this, even
Oh wow.
if, yeah. So there's that. But yeah, it was just literally just forcing myself to wear it. And anyone who has a hearing, I also had a hearing aid, so that's tough too, but to first start wearing. But anyone who has a hearing aid or an implant will say like the hardest part is just keeping it on because
Uh-huh.
it gives you
Uncomfortable.
headaches. It's
Yeah.
so noisy. It's like it's just hard. It drains you. It makes you tired because your brain is just thinking about a lot more than it's used to.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
But
But what
yeah,
about with your left ear though? Did they have to do surgery on that ear as well, or what?
no, I just have a hearing aid. Oh,
Your video went away. I can still
so
hear you though.
okay, I got someone called me and I put a
Oh,
do not disturb on
that's
my
fine.
phone, but okay. Um,
Just don't worry
oh
about
well.
it.
Sorry. I'll call them back. But so let's see. So my left ear, I just wear a hearing aid in, and I won't do a surgery on that left ear until it gets so bad that I need it.
Okay.
Because
Mhm.
if you do a surgery on an ear that can still hear some, it will inevitably destroy some of those little tiny hair cells in your
Oh,
ear and
interesting.
make
Yeah.
it kind of, in order for it to be put in, it kind of destroys everything in its path to a degree. So
Got it.
it would make my hearing worse right now if I did
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Sure. Okay.
Science.
Oh
So
man. Okay. So
yeah.
you're what about like listening back to the recording and everything? Was that okay? Like when you're in the studio, you're halfway through. I don't know how far in the process you were, but you were working on an album, and then to take what, like at least a month or two off, I'm sure, to like relearn everything. Was it longer than that?
Well, I literally took a whole year off from I stopped recording the album, took a whole year to
Oh
just
wow. Okay, I didn't
yeah.
realize you took a whole
Uh-huh.
year out of there.
Yeah,
Okay.
I did. I just it was just a lot at the time and I just needed to not focus on that at the moment. I really needed to just focus on learning how to hear and I wanted to just write more songs. So
Hmm.
I started doing that and I ended up meeting one of my producers, Tammi Kidd Hutton. She's a really amazing hit songwriter here in Nashville, and she happened to see me play. And I was, I think I met her and played a song for her the first day that I wore my implant. And she loved what I did, didn't know I had hearing loss, and said, "Let me help you." So I also started going under her wing at that time. And she said she heard my songs that I'd gotten halfway done with recording. And she said,
Yeah.
let me take you on this ride and go make them even better. So
Wow.
that was like kind of like the happy ending there of like,
Sure.
stopping recording for a year to meet someone really great.
Hmm.
Mhm. So
And
and
did
then
you
finish it.
scrap? Did you scrap what you had done in the beginning and just start fresh, or did you
Um,
keep some of that stuff?
there were some songs I scrapped and some that I kept like the bones of, and then just um, added some more players on. Really like some reinvented, some not. Some had bones. Some I decided I'll scrap entirely because sometimes it's better to just go in fresh.
Hmm.
So it's a mix of it all, really. So it's a Frankenstein piece.
Sure.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
When like when you got your hearing back, or when you could hear, when you like after that year, going back and listening to the record that you had started, like was it sonically different, or is your hearing pretty much the same? Does that make any sense?
Well, there are definitely like parts that I can't hear well unless like someone will be talking about some cool little part in the song, a harmony or a vocal or something that's been pushed back just a little. And I can't hear it unless you isolate that one sound. Like I'll be like, I
Oh,
never
I
knew
see.
there was a wood block there, or I never knew there was that. So there was a lot of that of just going back into the songs and hearing it that way, having to just um, I don't know, the songs necessarily didn't sound different, but I just hearing them was just always going to be hard. That's a horrible explanation, but that's what I've got to say.
Yeah, no, I'm
Um,
just curious. Like, but that makes sense. Well, what's really interesting with hearing, I don't know if you've seen this before, but like on YouTube, like there's certain frequencies that you stop hearing when you get to a certain age.
Yeah. So that when you look at my chart, like my
Mm-hmm.
hearing chart, it's this slope of the higher frequencies I don't hear well. So it's kind of, it literally looks like a little slope there showing
Uh-huh.
like where all the, as we get towards I guess we'll say that here's the high frequencies or here's the high
Yeah.
frequencies. And here's the low frequencies, it's like this dip. So
Right.
as we get higher in the frequency, it drops. So like
Wow.
hearing higher pitched instruments, even like understanding people's voices is harder in a lot of respects,
Yeah, if they
especially
have
like,
if they have higher voice or a
yeah,
lower voice.
yeah. So men are a lot easier to understand. And
Hmm.
yeah, if you're a soft speaker, then we may never get to know each other, like if I'm hearing
Sure.
someone. So there's definitely, it's not just like, you don't just lose volume, you do lose frequencies.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, I remember like my sister was the one that told me about this because my sister's 11 years younger than I am. And
Hmm.
I remember like when I was in high school and stuff, like people had cell phones, but it was kind of like very minimal amount of people did. Uh,
Um,
but my sister, when she was in school, like everybody had a phone. And she was telling me that the kids would set like these ringtones and alerts on their phone to these super high frequencies that the teacher couldn't
yeah.
hear. And she was telling me about this. I'm like, this is, there's no way this is true and right. Like, there's no way that there's a sound that, the teacher can't hear, yet all you kids are like texting each other. And sure enough, she showed me on YouTube, and it was like my dad and me and my sister were sitting there, and she's like, can you hear this? And once it got to like a certain age, like my dad couldn't hear it, and we're both like, you can't hear
That's
that. And,
cool.
and then like when it got to me, like I couldn't hear it and she could hear it. And it's so like, it's crazy like how that happens.
I guess that does make sense. You lose the high frequencies first because you always hear of older folks having a hard time hearing people talk, for instance. And
Right.
yeah, but that's crazy. That's really smart too. Those kids are,
I
whoever did
know.
that. Yeah.
I'm like, what? And she's like, yeah, there are like these certain ringtones you can download that were like these
I,
really high frequencies that they could hear
uh,
because they're like, 13, 14, 15.
yeah.
And
I wish I could download. It wouldn't work for me, but
right.
I want that. It sounds fun.
Yeah, it's
Um,
crazy.
And when you mentioned phones, I remember growing up, I actually shared a phone with my brother. We had like a phone that we shared, so which was really frustrating.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, just I don't know, just passing it to each other in school, kind of thing.
That's
But
funny.
mm,
Right
yeah,
on. Cool. Well, so your new record is out. It's finished. You finally got it done. Tell me about the album. Was it just a totally different process again when you started over after the year off?
yeah. I mean, it definitely was. There were so many different steps in it. Well, meeting Tammi, I ended up having some amazing session players play on the record. And so we had the chance to really like go into some of these songs um, by like going into a room all together and recording as a group right then. Whereas some of the songs I'd recorded earlier on, we were doing them, track by track. It wasn't as fluid in that respect. So it was like a
Mm-hmm.
whole different way of recording, which I personally love being all in a room and people feeding off each other.
Mm-hmm.
So, and there was a little of that with the earlier songs or earlier renditions, but not as much. Whereas after surgery going into it, that was really more what we focused on. So that was the most fun to me because I love just getting in a room and letting people kind of, I don't like telling everyone what to do. I just love
Mm-hmm.
to see what they're going to do.
And just
And
kind of
so,
collaborate with
yeah, and
them.
then go
That's
from
cool.
there.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Right
nothing
on.
like, not rocket science, but it was fun to see that difference.
Sure.
Um,
Wow. Well, what about as far as promoting it? Obviously, no one can go out and play shows right now. Have you
yeah.
been doing like live streams? It looks like you have a pretty legit setup there. Have you been doing
Oh yeah,
some
I
some
I
live
bought
stuff?
this. for that reason, after I realized COVID wasn't going away, thought, well, I'm not spending my money on anything else, like going
Yeah.
anywhere. I don't get this.
Oh, that's a
So
great mic
yeah.
too.
Oh,
The
the I never get it right.
SM7 or
7B,
7B. Yep.
7B, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great mic. It's kind of foolproof. Like, I don't think you can mess it up too much, just
Yeah. Those are
it's easy. But so I bought a little bit of gear, bought like a tripod for my phone, and I just thought, yeah, I've done some live streams. I'm getting more into that. Meeting people, via like interviews type things like this. So there's been a lot of that. This was like the craziest year to put out a record. Had I seen that coming, it would have been helpful. But yeah, because my plans were to actually go places, play shows, have meetings in person with people. And everyone's so understaffed, I think, right now too, at a lot of the music business. Not everyone's in the same buildings together. Radio stations are still just one or two people in a room kind of thing. So it is a really strange time to be promoting. It's fun. I like the challenge, but I will say it's different.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I know, it's crazy. Everyone has to kind of adapt, and live streams weren't a thing 6 months ago, or they were, but not like to this extent.
Yeah, and some of the live streams, it's hard because you can't really interact with anyone. You might see a text there, but that is the awkward part, I think, from a performance standpoint. But and otherwise in promotion, I did just film a music video. Was able to get some people to risk their lives and put on some masks.
Oh, cool! Tell me about the video.
Yeah, so we filmed it in East Nashville, and it's going to be for If That's What It Takes. So I'm really excited about that. And just the whole process was kind of strange. I'm really the only one in the video because we couldn't have a bunch of people
to anyone.
with me.
Sure.
Yeah, so just being smart about our shots and how we did them, and just even finding places that would let us go use their space, was a little bit of a hurdle, because we were able to go to a venue and shoot some, and rent like a little house and shoot some, but it's just a little bit of a hurdle trying to find those places.
Definitely, a lot more complicated to shoot a video nowadays.
Yeah.
Wow. Well,
but yeah, that should be out pretty soon.
Very cool. That's awesome. Well, Zoe, thank you so much for talking with me today. I really appreciate it. You've been awesome.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be on here, and it's been fun.
Yeah. I have one more question. I want to know if you have any advice for aspiring artists.
Okay. Yes, I have so much advice and so many things I've messed up on, but and I'm still learning. But I would say just I think always stay true to yourself. I think that's very important, but also learn to take criticism well. I think this is a world where, it's good to grow and learn, hey, maybe I sang this part a little differently, or if I, moved around a little more on stage, or listening to those kind of critiques are good. Obviously, if you don't have to listen to everyone, but I think that is a really hard part about being an artist and putting yourself out there, is this balance of being yourself and also knowing when to take that critique as well. And so I think that's always a learning curve. So I would say that, and don't get bogged down by this year. I think it's all gonna get better, and music will thrive again. Bringing it backward.